Before I start, I just want to say that this Lyrica was actually the first drug I ever did, even before weed. The only thing I remember from it is I took it in school and I couldn't keep my balance. I was holding onto the wall and everything. It was fucking insane to me at the time. Haven't done it since, and that was what, 9 years ago now? 10 years ago almost? So yeah, that's my experience with it. I'd love to create my own report for it, but that's all I remember from it. And yeah, it was a fun time. So as long as you're safe with these kind of drugs, you probably won't have a problem. But don't overdo it like these fucking idiots. It was a normal day and I was visiting with my friend B at his house. I had recently acquired 10 capsules of Lyrica, brand name for Pregabalin. As gabapentin can be used with recreational effects, Pregabalin is a GABA receptor agonist akin to benzodiazepines, and I had read reports about using Pregabalin recreationally, so I decided to give it a try. I also suffer from GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, and thought that if a larger dose had effects akin to benzodiazepines, then I can use this medicine in a normal dose to combat my anxiety. Most people in the reports I had read used dosages between 1200 and 1800 milligrams, so I decided it would be safer to use a smaller dosage to get a feel for things first. Wow, was I wrong. I took 5 capsules, 750 milligrams, of Pregabalin at around 5:30 p.m. I was in a good setting, visiting with my friend B and playing Xbox 360. I was expecting a nice benzo-like feeling and an enjoyable evening. I was in a good mood and I had taken a lower dose, so I was expecting to have some fun. After around 30 minutes, I experienced a slight lightheadedness akin to drinking a beer or two or taking a very low dose of a benzo. I felt slightly euphoric, although that might have been a placebo. A slight loss of motor coordination was experienced, albeit not much to hinder anything. An hour passed and the effects really started to manifest themselves. My mind felt extremely cloudy and I experienced more loss of coordination. I stumbled around and I couldn't play the Xbox anymore. I decided to go to my friend's room to hop on his computer and browse the internet. I stumbled a little on the way to his room, but I just assumed that those were the effects of the drug and I had nothing to worry about. When I got into his room and sat down at the computer, I started to twitch. This worried me a little, but I just assumed it was a random side effect I shouldn't worry about. Around this time, the mental cloudiness was in full effect. However, this effect wasn't enjoyable or euphoric at all, like the cloudiness with benzos or alcohol is. This effect made me feel physically sick. After being on the computer for a few minutes, the twitching grew worse and more violent. I ended up knocking over a drink onto the floor because I involuntarily knocked it down. I took this as a sign I should lay down, so I got up to make my way back into the living room to lay down on the couch. I remember getting up, but I don't remember walking into the living room. According to my friend, I collapsed right in front of the couch and started twitching violently, and I was gasping for air. He called 911 and moved me to a safe spot so I wouldn't hit my head on anything sharp. When I woke up, my friend, his brother, and a bunch of random people who must have been neighbors were all standing above me. My friend asked me if I felt okay enough to talk. I did, and I asked him what happened. He said that I had a seizure and that the EMTs would be arriving shortly. One of the random neighbors asked me what I had taken, and I lied and said that I'd only taken my Prozac that day because I was only going to tell the EMTs and doctors what I had really taken. I was still in a pretty bad haze, but I could talk coherently and understood what had happened. Shortly after, the EMTs arrived and put me in the ambulance. The one in the back with me asked me what I had taken, and I told him. He then asked me some basic questions to get my information and to make sure I was in a state of mind to be able to even answer questions. We arrived at the hospital shortly after, and I was put into a room. A few minutes after I got there, my parents arrived, along with my aunt, who is a nurse and was working at a different nearby hospital. My parents believed me to be a good-for-nothing drug abuser and assumed I had overdosed on some sort of illegal drug instead of simply trying to find a cure for my anxiety disorder that wasn't an antidepressant. Some nurses came into the room and got my basic information and then put a saline drip into me. I had to get up and go with a nurse several times to do chest x-rays, CT scans, and a urine sample. They also took a blood sample to do a drug screen. After I got back into my room from doing all those tests, the doctor came in and informed me I had a seizure and a heart arrhythmia. My heart had stopped for about 20 to 30 seconds. Upon hearing that my blood and urine was to be used for a drug screen, my dad commented, "Well, now we'll find out about all the drugs you've been taking these past few months." I had not taken any drugs, illegal or not, in the past year. Shortly after, a nurse returned and informed me and my parents that the drug screen came up negative for all illegal drugs, and the only drugs they found were Pregabalin and Prozac. I chuckled to myself because the look on my father's face was priceless. He had hoped to catch me using drugs so he could stop sending me money for my apartment rent. I believe the nurses assumed I'd only taken one Lyrica capsule because they simply told me that taking medicine not prescribed to me is potentially dangerous and said that I just had an adverse reaction to it. I know, however, that the reaction was caused from the amount ingested. This report is a warning to all those who are curious about using Pregabalin for recreation. It is not recreational, and it is extremely dangerous. I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone else. I've taken Pregabalin in doses around the 1,000 milligram mark many times now and had a very enjoyable experience. After receiving my parcel, I thought it would be interesting to see what happens at even higher doses. It all began well. I had taken 3 packs of 750, adding up to 2,250 milligrams. My mate turned up a few minutes later to take me to a dubstep night in a nearby club. We journeyed over and began partying. It wasn't long before I began twitching and having mini blackouts. I'd had a similar feeling, although not this intense, on smaller doses of Pregabalin, so I didn't think much of it to begin with. As the night went on, the twitching got worse, as did the blackouts. When I say mini blackouts, they seemed to last only a fraction of a second, but towards the end of the night, it was like they were lasting for longer. I was still standing up okay, so I tried to ignore them whilst I carried on dancing. It wasn't until the end of the night when things went wrong. We were just leaving the club when all of a sudden, I was sitting on the floor with a concerned bouncer and 2 very concerned mates. What happened? Why am I on the floor? It turns out I had fallen to the ground and began seizing. I'm not sure how long I seized for the first time, but I found out later that I had been seizing for about 5 minutes in total. I got up. Everyone was concerned and talking about phoning an ambulance. I don't need an ambulance, I said. Look, I can walk in a straight line. Boom. And once again, I woke up to see lots of concerned faces, now including the ambulance crew. I was taken off in a stretcher, fully conscious. My heart rate was taken, 150 beats per minute. Very, very high, but it was going down. Apparently they had taken it just after I had seized. I didn't remember. The rest of the night was spent in the hospital where I slowly recovered. I was released at 7 a.m. that morning, still with a slight twitch, but other than that, fully recovered. I've learned my lesson about doing high doses of drugs, especially when I'm not certain about the effects. I had recovered from a serious overdose, a few milligrams more, and I don't want to think what could have happened. What would have happened if I was alone that day? I was very lucky. I've been taking Pregabalin recreationally for quite some time, as my mother always had a prescription for it. It is an amazing drug, probably one of the best I have ever tried, and I've tried a lot. I've experimented with DXM, smoked salvia 4 times, DMT twice, Deturaleaves once, never doing that again. Taken opiates, hydrocodone, oxycodone, morphine, hydromorphone, Roxycontin, Xanax, Valium, and none of them compared to the feeling of taking Pregabalin. To me, it is like an ecstasy roll, an alcohol buzz, and opiates, all in one pill. Me and my friend, who will be known as S from now on, decided to do something on New Year's Eve of 2010. I grabbed a few Lyrica out of my mom's bottle and headed out to his house. When I got there, my brother was there as well. I told him that I had Pregabalin, and he got all excited because he loves the drug just as much as I do. At about 6 p.m. that night, I ingested 900 milligrams, and I gave him 300 milligrams. Then we proceeded to roll a blunt of some Northern Lights while S played some acoustic guitar. When I got done rolling the marijuana cigar, I could tell I was already feeling the effects from the Lyrica, mostly because I hadn't eaten prior to taking it. My mood was heightened, and I was excited to smoke the weed since I've never done it before on Lyrica. We lit it up and passed it around between me, S, and my brother. I was taking deep hits off of it and holding the smoke in until it got back around to me to get the full effect from it. When it got down to a roach, I was more stoned than I have ever been. I had never felt so amazing in my entire life. It was absolute pure bliss, and I could tell S was feeling the same way. After about an hour of talking about stuff that really doesn't matter, laughing and smiling at everything, S pulled out a half-gallon of vodka out of his refrigerator. I had never drank on Lyrica before either, and I was already feeling amazing, so I thought, what's the worst that could happen? We began taking shots of the vodka, and after about 30 minutes of it being open, I had already taken probably 10. By now, it is 9 p.m., and I'm feeling drunk. We all decided that we were hungry, and S went and got some chicken breasts out of his freezer. We built a fire to cook the chicken on, sat it on the grilling rack, and went back inside to take a few more shots. I took 5 more and went outside to check on the chicken with my brother and S. We sat around the fire, bullshitting as usual. Then I started to get a little sleepy. Well, this is where all hell breaks loose. It's probably around 11:30 when this happens. I began to doze off, sitting straight up in a chair, about 2 feet from a roaring fire. You can probably already tell where this is going. Next thing I know, I'm laying on S's couch, and S and my brother walk in with the chicken. My brother and S explained to me that I passed out and fell in the fire. They pulled me out of it and had to put the fire out that was on my jacket. They said they carried me inside and laid me on the couch for my own safety. My brother said when I fell, all S could say was, "Oh shit, get the chicken," but they did practically save my life. When 12 a.m. hit, apparently S went outside with a shotgun and began to fire off some rounds, and I took 5 more shots. Then I went outside with him to shoot some more like a bunch of hillbillies we are. I do not have any recollection of this though. I woke up the next morning with puke in my hair, 3rd-degree burns on my back, and a halfway destroyed jacket. Pregabalin is a fun drug when used responsibly, but when you mix it with alcohol, like any other drug, it becomes a bad idea. I do recommend though that if you are using it recreationally, to try it with some good pot. It is absolutely amazing.